And so today we're going to talk about a third lie, and it's this. Here's lie number 3: is attraction and lust are the same thing. Okay, anything you're like, aren't those the same things? Like, they sound like they're the same things, but they're actually very different. So the lie number 3 is attraction and lust are the same thing. Okay, has everyone got that written down? Time, move on. Okay. Is everybody good?
No.
I have a question.
You have a question?
So let's say,
If this is a question
I don't know.
that might be good for the question and answer session, I would say save it.
It's so long.
I'll have a whole thing I'm going to get to, so I'm going to answer your question. So let's see. Okay, is everyone good now? I'm going to go ahead and go on, give someone else. So here's the problem. If I was to ask you to define lust, these are the 3 probably most common things that when people ask you, like, what is lust? If you're asked to say what it is, these are the 3 most common things. The first thing is, some people would say, it's merely to be attracted to the opposite sex. That's lust. If you're attracted to someone, if you notice them walking by them on the street and you're like, man, they look good, some people would say that's lust. Other people would say, no, it's to think someone is hot, right? Like, okay, it's one thing to say, oh, they're beautiful, whatever. But if you think that, oh, they're hot, okay, that's lust. That's the red line. So, and yet some other people think, it's like to look at or admire someone's body. So like if you see someone, like maybe you see your friend kind of catching a look a little bit too long, and you catch them in the act, like, hey, what are you looking at? Stuff like that. Maybe that's lust. So if I was to ask you guys, okay, what is lust? Okay, what does it mean to lust after someone? How would you define this? Anyone want to just take like a guess? Like how would you define that? Does anyone want to take a guess?
Don't want like sexual things.
To want sexual things.
Only.
Okay. To only want sexual things?
To
Okay.
obsess about it.
To obsess about it? Okay. Anyone else want to take a... And again, I'm not saying y'all are wrong. I just want to hear what other people say.
I would say what number 1 said.
You would say to be attracted, to notice someone else, like, man, they look good, I like that. Okay.
Right.
Do you think that's lust? Dawson?
No.
No, hey, go ahead, say it.
No, it's not.
I know what I'm saying. It's a sin.
It's a sin. That's how you define it? Okay.
That's
Right.
So,
Is it thinking about the curves on a woman's body?
is it thinking about the curves in a woman's body?
I
No, maybe it is. Maybe it is.
I got some curves.
So we're gonna get into it now. Hey, real quick, next. So whatever you think the definition is, I want you to write that. There's a little section that says, what is your definition of lust, something like that, or how do you define it? Go ahead and write in what you think it is. So even if you're like, I don't know, it doesn't, just yes, okay? Because remember, there's a passage in the Bible, I think that we've all probably heard, that says, whoever looks upon a woman to lust has committed adultery in his heart. So based off of that, what do you think lust is? Just off the top of your head, what would you assume that it means?
Being horny.
So now here is the problem with this lie number 3. Here's the consequence of someone who believes attraction and lust are the same thing. I'm gonna give you, think of this like a comic strip. Think of this is like an everyday thing. So first, if you're a Christian, you want to honor God, you'll start off probably every day, you'll say, God, help me not to lust today, right? If that's your heart, man, you want to honor God, you don't want to have a lustful heart, that's great. So you'll start, God, help me not to lust. But then, second one, you'll notice someone who's attractive, all right? Maybe, if you're a guy, you notice a girl. If you're a girl, you notice a guy. You're like, man, they look good. You acknowledge that. But if you believe attraction and lust are the same thing, then, and if you're a Christian, you're trying to follow God, then it's going to lead to this. Oh, no, I'm lusting. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to be doing that. And then you'll immediately begin to feel shame, right? So then what happens next? Then it turns into blame. Because then you say, God, it's your fault. Why did you make me this way? You made me to be attracted to other people. So it's your fault that I'm dealing with this. So then it starts out with shame, then it turns into blame. Remember we talked about that earlier in the series? And then at least at this point where you cave eventually. Maybe after a couple weeks, maybe after a couple months, but eventually you feel so guilty and over, you say, you know what, I can't win. I'm only just human anyway. Maybe you give in to pornography. Maybe you give in to scrolling through Instagram and looking for things you shouldn't be looking for. Whatever the situation may be, however you may partake in lust, you cave into it. Because you feel that it's an unwinnable battle. I just can't help it. Attraction and lust are the same thing. It's all wrong. I can't get away from it. You cave in. And then ultimately that leads to you feeling guilty, and at least you trying to repent, and the whole cycle starts over and over and over and over again. And for many Christians, they are stuck in this exact loop, where they are trying to honor God. They don't want to lust. They don't want to have that mindset, but they feel that they can't escape it because they believe that attraction and lust are the same thing. But here's the deal, though. Here's the truth. Attraction and lust are completely separate things. They are not the same. Attraction and lust are separate things. I'll give you guys a second to write that, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Okay. So stay with me. Now we're about to get in the scripture. Y'all going to see why they're different. So attraction and lust are separate things. Does everyone pretty much have that?
Yes.
If you don't have it, can you get it from someone
Tyler, I
else?
think he's got separate wrong.
Separate? It's possible. I spelled it, you know, Anna's
I'm
the one
pretty
called me
sure
out my
E
spelling
must be an
recently.
A.
So we're going to look at a passage real quick. We're going to go to James chapter 1. And we're going to start in verse 12. Let me get there real quick. See, what's funny is that I actually marked out everything in the Bible app, but then I can't use the Bible app because I'm using that to record. Haha, funny. Now I got to go and actually find it manually. Yo, paperback mode?
What?
Okay, let me get there.
We've gone
Paper.
paper.
Hey, yo, bro, that was kind of crazy.
So okay, so James chapter 1, we're going to start in verse 12. I'm going to read through it, okay? So y'all pay attention. King James Version, here we go. Blessed is the man that endures temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to them that love him. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither does he tempt any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it has finished, brings forth death. So if you got to fill in the blank verse, I hope you filled that in. But that's the key here. God does not tempt people. Okay? God does not try to tempt you to do anything wrong. That's not God. So if you say that, man, it's God's fault. He made me this way. He made me to lust after people. Then what are you accusing God? You're saying God himself is tempting you, are you not? God, it's your fault that I am this way. God, it's your fault. You made me to be attracted, right? But that's the thing. Yeah, God did make you with attraction, but that's different than lust. So we're going to get into that. And first, we have to understand what the word lust means. So you may be surprised. There is a good form of lust. Now, before you, don't get off track. Don't let your mind wander. Lust is actually a neutral term. It is not just a sexual thing. I know we use it in our culture. Typically, when you hear the word lust, it's usually talking about something sexual. But lust is a neutral term. Okay? And we're going to get into it.
Wait.
I give you an example of it. Like, you lust for this, like shoes or something.
Yeah, that's what we're about to get into. We're going to get into the example. So if you can't read the definition, it says, the good definition of lust is this: to strongly desire something good. The word lust by itself just simply means that you strongly desire something. So in order for it to be a good lust, it means you are strongly desiring something that is good. Okay, this is a neutral term. So we're going to go to Exodus chapter 20, verse 17. And we're going to see where I'm getting this definition from. I'm not pulling it out of nowhere, all right? I just want you guys to know that. So Exodus chapter 20, verse 17 says this. It says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, his donkey, okay, don't get me wrong, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor. So it's interesting there. It says, listen, you know that thou shalt not covet, that's one of the 10 commandments, right? Thou shalt not covet. It says you shall not covet your neighbor's house, but it says you also don't covet your neighbor's wife. Here's the reason it says that. The word lust and the word covet are actually interchangeable in the Bible. In the original language the Bible was written in, which in the Old Testament it was mainly Hebrew, in the New Testament it was Greek. So in the Greek, in the New Testament, there's two different words that are used. The word for lust is epithumia, and the word for covet is epithumio. They mean the same thing. It's two different words that describe the same. So to lust after something or to covet something, it's the same action. You are strongly desiring something. Okay? So that means it's the object of that desire determines whether or not that is a good lust. So we're going to see an example of a good lust. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 31. Let me get there. Man, all these years of doing sword drills kind of helps me out a little bit when I'm trying to find
Sword drills?
sword drills.
You
Man,
know
it's
what
where
a sword drill is?
sword drill, like, hey, turn to the,
That's
you
where you
start
put
the
the
Bible
Bible.
closed, and they say a certain passage, and the first one it gets there gets all the points and stuff like that.
We did that before.
We have done that before. Okay, so 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 31 says this. Y'all listen. It says, I'm going to read a couple verses back. It says, are all apostles, are all prophets, are all teachers, do all work miracles? Do all have the gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? It's saying all these different spiritual gifts. Does everyone have every single spiritual gift? No. It says, but here's the verse. It says, but covet earnestly the best gifts, and yet show I unto you a more excellent way. It says, well, listen, you can't have every spiritual gift that exists, right? You can't have you can't be good in every area of your life. But it says, but covet earnestly. That means to desire strongly that God would give you the best spiritual gifts. It says to covet those things. So there's a good way to covet, and AKA, there's a good way to lust after something. But you have to lust after something that is itself good. Okay? And we're going to see another example like this in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. It talks about the same work as used again. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 says this. It says, this is a true saying, if a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. That word desire in the Greek is the exact same word used over in Corinthians. It's the same word. Desire used here and covet used back in Corinthians, it's the exact same word. It means lust. Whoever lusts, and it says the office of a bishop, that's like a deacon, right? That's how we would understand it today. Y'all know what a deacon is in the church, like what Chuck does, right? They're greeters that kind of help.
Chuck
They're like,
Jimmy?
yeah, they're like spiritual advisors to Pastor Steve. It says if you desire that, if you are coveting after that, if you lust after that job, that's a good thing. You should want to have positions in the church. That's good, okay? But that's the key. There has to be a good thing that you are desiring. So then, now that we understand that what lust and what it is, we also have to understand, okay, let me give a couple examples and we'll move on. So the job of a pastor, if you are in your mind, you're desiring, man, I want to be able to have the job of a pastor. Or maybe it's marriage. Maybe like, man, I really want to be married one day. I want to have a good marriage. I want to have kids. I want to have all these beautiful things because it's just an awesome thing to have a family. Those are good things to lust after. Okay? It's a good thing to covet and to desire and to lust after these things because those are holy and good things. There's nothing bad about wanting to be a pastor. There's nothing bad about wanting to be in a marriage, right? So those are two examples. Now, if you don't finish writing them down, get them from someone else. Now we're going to talk about sinful lust. Now we're going to this is the part where most of you guys probably understand it, and this is where I think some of the confusion comes from. So the definition of sinful lust is to strongly desire something sinful. Right? If the good lust is to strongly desire something good, then a bad lust is you strongly desire something bad. So the most common example, and you guys have probably heard this verse several times, Matthew chapter 5, we're going to go to verse 27. And so where Jesus is talking about lust, and I referenced it earlier. Here's what he says. It says, you have heard that it was said of them of old time that you shall not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looks upon a woman to lust after her has committed adultery with her already in his heart. Okay, so this Jesus is addressing lust. He's saying, listen, you've heard it said that you shouldn't cheat on your spouse. Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. But let me go one step further. If you have looked upon someone who wasn't your spouse in desire to have sex with them, you've already committed that act in your heart. Because lust, right, is a matter of the heart. The things that you desire, the things that you're passionate about come from your heart. Now, not the literal organ, but you get what I'm saying, right? Comes from your heart. So Jesus is saying that, listen, if you desire to commit a sinful act with someone, okay, then that is a sinful lust. That is a sin in and of itself. To desire to sin is to sin. Because your heart, right, is the one that has the desire. Remember we talked about last week, it's out of the heart that comes evil desires and impassion and impurity. Out of the heart comes these things in our life. The heart is the key to all this, right? That's kind of focus. That's why it's the logo on the wall. Your heart is the key to this whole thing. So Jesus says if you desire in your heart to go and commit a sinful act with someone, then that is a sinful lust. You've already done it in your heart. So there's another example. And I think this is going to help to kind of clarify even further the issue. So Romans chapter 7, verse 7. So this is Paul. He's talking about the Old Testament law. And if you don't know this part, I've talked about it before. But one of the reasons the Old Testament law was so detailed and hard to follow is because God was trying to make a point to us that we cannot follow it, that we cannot be perfect. No matter how hard we try, we're going to fail. So Paul's talking about that in this passage. That's kind of the background. So in Romans chapter 7, verse 7 says this. It says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? But God forbid, no, I had not known sin except by the law. And he says, and here's the focus. He says, for I had not known lust except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. So Paul's talking about, listen, because God gave us the law in the Old Testament, because of how hard it was to follow, it makes it clear to us that we're sinners and we're imperfect. But he says, I wouldn't even know what lust is unless the law had told me, don't covet. Because what is he saying? Lust and coveting are the same thing. To lust after someone else's spouse is the same thing as coveting them. There's no difference. Lust and coveting are the same. Y'all track with me now. So now that we understand a better picture of what lust is. So now that we have a better picture of that, let's talk about it. Okay, yeah, let me give you some examples. I keep getting ahead of myself. So some examples of a sinful lust would be your neighbor's stuff. That's the most obvious. Coveting stuff that doesn't belong to you, that you don't have, you're jealous of. Right? Whether it's car, money, house, whatever it is. But then another thing that would be a sinful lust would be to desire premarital sex. You fantasize, or you desire, you think about having sex with someone that you're not married to. That is a sinful lust. Okay? Does that make it clear? Is everyone kind of tracking? Okay. Everyone have that written down? You got any more time?
No.
Okay. So now let's talk about attraction. Okay, so now we know what lust is, but what is attraction? So here's the definition. It's pretty simple. It is an interest or liking for someone or something. Attraction is an interest or liking for someone or something. Okay? Already, I think we can tell it's very different than lust. Because lust is a strong, passionate desire for something, whereas attraction is, I just merely like what I see. You don't desire to have anything, you just like what you see. So there's a couple of examples of attraction in the Bible, actually. There's two of them that I want to talk about. Genesis chapter 29, verse 17, okay? It's describing a woman. It's describing a woman who someone finds attractive, all right? Genesis chapter 29, okay, verse 17. Okay, this is Jacob. Y'all know what Jacob is? He's the guy who had a beef with his brother Esau. Lied to him, stole his birthright, all that stuff. Y'all remember this story? If not, it's fine. That's not really the focus. So in chapter 17, it's kind of describing, Jacob is describing his, let's say, what he thinks. He's desired this girl, Rachel, who he wants to be married to. And Rachel has a sister named Leah. So this is how he describes her, okay? He says, Leah was weak in the eyes, but Rachel was beautiful in both form and figure. It says Leah was weak in the eyes. All I can think of when it says weak in the eyes, it basically is a nice way of saying she ain't it. All right, she ain't that attractive. God bless her, God loves her, but listen, I don't find her attractive. But it says, but he says, but Rachel was beautiful in both form and figure. So it's saying that Jacob noticed both of their physical bodies. He noticed that in his opinion, he felt that Rachel was attractive. He's not just talking about her face, he's talking about her entire body. Now, does that mean he was just sitting there staring at it for okay, no. It doesn't take a long time to notice if you find someone attractive or not. But Jacob is describing, listen, I find her attractive. I find her beautiful, both in not only her character, but also her form, the way her body looks. I think that's attractive. Was he lusting just by finding her attractive? No. Now, could he have decided to lust down the road? Of course. But just finding someone attractive is not in and of itself lust. There's another example of this in Esther chapter 2, verse 7. Let's see if I can get there. That's a really, really small book of the Bible. My sword drill skills may not come in handy this time. Let's see. I gotta go to the index. I gotta figure out the exact page. We're never gonna find it. We're gonna be here for
Didn't you go to school for this?
Yeah, you think. Okay, verse 356. Okay, I'm almost there. Anyway, okay. Esther chapter 2 in verse 7. It's once again, this isn't Jacob anymore, but it's describing someone else. It's describing this woman named Esther, which if you want to know more about her, go read the book of Esther. And it says, and the maid, or Esther, was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, okay, now I'm not going to focus on that, but it says, but Esther, she was fair and beautiful. It talks about, in different translations, that she was beautiful in her figure. Again, kind of repeating what was happening in Genesis. Describing her physical beauty, saying she is good to look at. That's all that it's saying. That's attraction. Someone was attracted to her. Were they lusting just by saying they're attractive? No. So these are some examples of attraction. Now, let me give you two more. Okay, you can write these down if you're taking notes. What is an example of attraction? If you've ever been to an art museum and you've seen a beautiful piece of painting or whatever, That would be enjoying a painting, would be an example of something that you're attracted to. I went to an art museum not too long ago, man. There's like this painting of an ocean. I thought it was like a picture, and it was like printed out on like a really big thing and framed. I thought it was like a photograph someone took. This thing was a painting, and I couldn't tell. I had to get like within 5 inches from it to see that it was actually a painting, to see the little bitty brush strokes. It was amazing. It was a beautiful piece of art. I was attracted to that painting. Okay, I didn't desire to take it. This was I forget the name of the
Was
museum.
it the Dallas Museum of Art?
No, it was a smaller one.
'Cause
Was
I
it
went there.
But anyway.
German Museum of
Yeah, no.
Nazi-
Anyway. So the point being is I was attracted to that painting. I found it physically beautiful to look at. It was an amazing painting, and it was extremely detailed. Now, did I covet that painting? Did I desire to take it home and steal it? No.
Yes.
I just enjoyed it, and I moved on with my day. Okay, well, I wasn't obsessing. I thought it was beautiful. That was good looking. It's great, but then that was it. Another example is admiring beauty. To notice the physical attractiveness of someone else, that's attraction. It's okay to notice that. That is what God made you with. God made you to be attracted to the opposite sex. That is God's design for you. That is not bad. It's not a sin to notice that someone is handsome. It's not a sin to notice that someone is beautiful. Those things are normal. But that's different than lust. To notice beauty is one thing. To desire to take that beauty for yourself is something entirely different. Y'all got the picture? Is anyone confused or lost on this? Does anyone have it's a very, and the way I best go describe it, there's a very clear, distinct line between saying I find this attractive and then fantasizing about taking it for yourself.
Oh.
It's one thing for me to look at Jackson and go, Jackson, you're tall and maybe you're a little bit handsome, right? But it would be another thing entirely if someone was to look at Jackson and some girl that has a crush on him go, man, I think he's attractive, and then begin to fantasize about him. Not that anyone would. I don't think that would ever happen. But y'all get the point that I'm making.
I know, I'm
It's okay to notice attractiveness. It's okay to notice beauty. But it's not okay then to then go the next step and then begin to fantasize about having that which you're not supposed to have. That is lust in a nutshell. There's a very clear, distinct line between attraction and lust. I don't think there's any confusion. I don't think there's any gray area. It's pretty clear.
Am I actually handsome to you though?
No.
So let's say you're like in marriage with someone.
We're going to talk about that. That's different. Okay, so now here's a day in the life of truth. This is the opposite of the comic we just saw a second ago. So it starts off the same way. Once you understand the distinction between attraction and lust, your day starts out the same. God, help me not to lust. I want to honor you with the way that I think about other people. Help me not to lust today. Then the same thing happens. You notice someone that you find attractive. Man, they look good head to toe, whatever the situation is. But then here's where the difference starts. Instead of going, oh no, I'm lusting, I need to stop, I can't look at him, I can't help it. Instead you go, man, what a beautiful child of God. That is God's handiwork, that is God's painting, that is God's design. It's beautiful. And so instead of feeling shameful about something that is normal and natural, now you go, you know what, instead of blaming God for that, you now go, God, thank you for your art, right? Thank you for making, them attractive. Thank you for making our bodies, man, it looks great. God, thank you for that. That is a blessing from God, the fact that we're attracted. No questions.
What?
So then, let's say that lust does begin to creep up. Okay, let's say that maybe down there, like you start thinking about it a little bit too much, and let's say lust does start to come up. Well, it's a lot easier to fight it now, because now you say, you know what, that's God's child. I'm not seeing it the same way I used to, man. I can't just simply lust after someone. That's God's child. That's someone that God made and loves. How could I just treat them and bring them down to a level just to fulfill my own fantasies? Because that's a child of God. Why would I want to lust? I can notice their beauty. I can enjoy it without having to go down that road. It's a lot easier to fight when you know the difference between the two things, isn't it? Instead of thinking they're both the same. So then at the end, what's the end result of that is freedom. Because now you can understand, okay, it's normal. It's okay for me to be attractive. It's okay for me to notice beauty. That's not a problem. I don't have to stop doing that. All I have to do is merely not to take it too far in lust. There's freedom in that. And what I think a lot of Christians get wrong is that they think attraction itself is lust. They think that in and of itself is sin. And so when they try to wage a war against lust in their life, they try to throw the whole thing out. They say, no, you can't even look at other people. That in and of itself is bad. But that's not what God says. Because then you're trying to wage a war against your own nature. You're trying to wage a war against something that God created you with, which is attraction. That's not bad. Remember when we talked about rat poison earlier in the series, right? We talked about how that little block that's used that rats eat and they die. How much of that block is actual poison? Like less than 1% of that. The rest of it is completely good food. So if the solution, okay, so if the porn industry, right, if a lie that we believe, if most of it is probably true, and there's only a little bit of portion of it that's wrong, then the solution for the rat, if he wants to live, is to not stop eating, okay? If the rat is facing, poison, right, he's facing rat poison, okay? If he wants to live, his solution is, if he could do this, okay, rats are dumb, obviously, but if the rat wants to live, all he has to do is just take out the poison. The rest of the food's good. Okay? So the solution for a Christian, if you want to wage a successful war against lust in your life, don't go after attraction. That's not a sin. And you're going to lose that battle because God made you to be attractive. Nothing wrong with that. Don't throw the good things out with the bad, is what I'm saying. Don't throw the good food out with the poison. Take the poison out of something, take the lie out, well then believe the truth. Don't go to war against something that God created you with. Go to war against a thing that has been perverted. That needs to be fixed, not the thing that God made you with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully I'm not confusing y'all. So we're going to read another passage, and I think this passage is kind of comical. I think this is where the original sin came from, all right? Not even going to lie. So we're going to go to Proverbs chapter 7. I'm going to start in verse 4. There's a couple verses here, but I think it's going to build up a case here, all right? Proverbs chapter 7. If you got the fill in the blank, go ahead and fill it in. Okay, it's going to make sense once I read it. Proverbs chapter 7. We're starting verse 4. So this is a guy, think of it as like a wise teacher. Okay, he's describing what he's seeing, okay? So he says, okay, let me skip that. It says, for at the window of my house, I looked through my casement. It says, I'm looking out the window of my house, I'm looking down to the street. He says, and I behold among the simple, okay, among the simps. I'm looking out, I'm seeing these simps out here in the street. And he says, and I discerned among the youths a young man completely void of understanding. He doesn't have understanding. Passing through the street near her corner, and he went the way to her house. Talking about a prostitute. It says, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark of the night, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of a prostitute and subtle of heart. For she is loud and stubborn in her feet, never stay in her own house. Now she is without, in the streets, and lies in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with the impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows, therefore came I forth to meet you, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. Okay, I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, and I have carved works with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with love. For my husband is not home. He is gone on a long journey, and he has taken a bag of money with him, and he will come back when it's time. And it says, then it goes back from talking from the woman's perspective. Now it goes back to, it says, then, okay, it says, with much fair speech she caused him to yield, and with the flattering of her lips she forced him. And he goes after her straightway as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. So to kind of summarize that, the reason I read that passage here is because we see this young man who he's describing is being led away to a prostitute, not by what he sings, not by how she looks, but by the words coming from her mouth. She was able to use her words to cause him to lust. Because if there's something we learned about lust so far, is that it's a matter of what? The heart. The eyes are not needed in order to lust. Did y'all know that? Your eyes are not needed to covet something that doesn't belong to you. Your eyes are not needed to desire something. All that's required for that is your heart. So then, let's talk about some ways in which lust occurs, but which there's no visual thing involved. Now, you're going to read these, and you're thinking, I'm going to explain them one by one, so bear with me. There's 3 examples in which I think that lust comes from a place has nothing to do with what you're seeing. The first would be an example of this, erotic books and stories, 50 Shades of Grey, stuff like that. Right. Okay, poems and books that are written with the purpose of it is meant to be like verbal pornography, basically. There's no pictures in 50 Shades of Grey. There's no videos to watch. All it is words on a page.
Literally a whole movie.
There's a movie. I'm talking about the book.
Oh.
Because it was a book before it was a movie. Okay, so the point that I'm making here is that there are there's entire books that are written that are just meant to be verbal pornography. Okay? There's not a single image or video to be things, and they are filled with lust. They are filled with sexual fantasizing that is wrong and sinful. It had nothing to do with what they saw. It had to do with what? This heart. They desire, not my heart, literally, their heart, not mine. I'm not lusting on their behalf. They're lusting, okay? But you get the point that I'm making. It had nothing to do with what they were seeing. It had everything to do with what they wanted here. Another thing is this cell phone sex. When I mean by cell phone sex, I'm not talking about sexting necessarily. I'm not talking about sending pictures, okay? That obviously is a problem. But what I'm talking about here is in the porn industry, there's actually a huge segment of the porn industry that all it is hotlines, where people will pay to call in and talk to someone who they don't see. And all they do was they will talk sexually to each other for hours on end. This is a real thing that apparently a lot of people do when I was doing research for this series. There's an entire segment of porn that is just calling to have someone talk to you seductively, just like we read in Proverbs.
Yeah.
All it took. So for a lot of people, the lust doesn't even come from what they're seeing. It comes from what they want in their heart. They want some sort of human-to-human interaction, and they'll just sit there and pay to have someone talk to them seductively for hours. That's a thing. I didn't know that. I've never done it, but apparently other people have done it.
Loneliness.
And the last thing is actually a better example. It's not a bad thing. So think about old couples for a second. I'm not asking you to, just bear with me, all right? But people who are old, who've been married for decades and decades, are they as physically attractive as they were when they first got married? No.
Yes.
Obviously, your body's age. I'm sorry. You're not going to look perfect for forever. I know there's some celebrities that do all these things to try to help them age better. But at the end of the day, your body's going to age. You're not going to look as good as you used to look. So then my question is, believe it or not, that old couples still do have sex from time to time. Probably not as often, but they do. So now the question is that I'm asking you guys is, how can an old couple continue to show love for each other in that way if they're not physically attractive anymore? How are they able to kind of have that passion for each other when they both know they're not that physically attractive? Their lust for each other and we're going to get out of this, I know. But I want you just to get the point that I'm making. The lust between them, okay, if you're married, lust is actually fine. This is what I was talking about earlier. If you're married, lust is perfectly okay because you're desiring your own spouse. That's not a sin. It's not a sin to want to have sex with your own spouse. But for an old couple, they have sincere passion for each other that goes beyond what the visual, that goes beyond their own bodies. It comes from a deep sense of love. So lust is not just a visual thing. It comes from the heart, as I've been saying this whole time. So if I can kind of summarize this way, I think this kind of summarizes what I hear, the struggle that I see a lot of Christians go through. So I think the way a lot of Christians think of attraction and lust, thinking of them the same way, I think they would probably come to this conclusion. They would say, you know what? Enjoying the sight of the human body, aka attraction, that's wrong. Like there's something wrong with that. You shouldn't be doing that. Remember in the first example, the first comic strip I gave? Someone who's attractive and they immediately think that they're lusting, they immediately think they're doing something wrong. So someone in that case, someone who believes that, they would say, you know what, enjoying the sight of other people, being attracted to them, that's perverse. There's something wrong with that. You shouldn't be doing that. That's wrong for you to do as a Christian. But then that same person would turn around and say, but you know what, but always having a lustful response, that's natural. We can't help it. God made us this way. I know we shouldn't be enjoying the sight of, we shouldn't be enjoying the human body. We shouldn't be attracted. That's wrong. But you know what, but always having a lustful response, that's natural. We can't help it. We're stuck. Okay, so that's how someone who believes lie number 3 would act. They would say, you know what? It's not natural to be attracted, but it is natural to lust, and we just can't help it. We just got to deal with it. That person has lost the battle before it's even started. They've already told themselves, this is a battle I can't win. But what does the truth say? If you believe the truth about this issue, your perspective is going to be the exact opposite. You're going to say, you know, enjoying the sight of the human body, or in other words, attraction, that's natural. That's something that God made us with. That's not something that's bad or wrong. That is natural. But always having a lustful response, that is perverse. That is the problem. It's normal for you to be attracted. It's always having a lustful response. That is what is perverse. That is not something that God made for you to do. That is something that is caused by your own sinful heart. Y'all see the difference? This is a complete inverse of that last statement. This is why I want you guys to get this, is because in order for you, we've gone through this series, we talked about how we've got all these different lies. The key to overcoming any sin in your life, ultimately, is a transformation of your own heart. Because you have a heart, if you're not saved, let me tell you this, you have a heart that is controlled by a sin nature, and you're never going to overcome it. You're going to constantly believe lies, you're going to constantly want to think things that you shouldn't think, and you're going to have no problem having that kind of a heart. But if you are saved, if you are a Christian, you have the power of the Holy Spirit. The Bible says you have a new man that God has given you access to. You have the ability to have this hard heart of yours transform and change to see things the way God sees it, to look at things the way God looks at them. So the whole key to this series is to understand the lies that you guys believe that keep you trapped in sin And then to look for, but what is the truth of God that I need to use to replace the lie? If I have a heart that's believing these lies and I have a heart that is constantly lusting, then that needs to be fixed. But the solution is not to stop looking altogether. The solution is not to just close my eyes and never look at anyone ever again, because that's not going to stop the fact that you have a lustful heart. The solution is to come to the feet of Jesus and say, God, give me a heart after your own heart. Help me to see other people the way you see them. Help me to think about them the way you think about them. Help me to understand that it's healthy and normal to be attracted, but that it's lust that I need to go to war against. That's what needs to stop. That's the key here. There's the last passage I want to read, and we're going to be done for tonight. It's Isaiah chapter 5, and we're going to read verses 20 through 21. Okay? If I can get there in time. Isaiah chapter 5, verses 20. Oh, no, wrong way. I'm going to learn one day. Index help. Okay, 455. Let me get there. Let me tell you what, man. I was unprepared not having my camera battery tonight.
Wait, all of y'all said it.
Also, it's hot in here. Y'all agree?
Yeah, they do.
I do.
All right, Isaiah. Okay, here we go. Isaiah chapter 5. I'm going to read verses 20 and 21. Y'all listen. It says this. It says, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight." What this verse is saying, and to put it simply, it's saying, if you say something is evil that God has said is good, then you be warned, because that's a lie. If you say something is good that is really evil, or if you say something is evil that is really good, it says woe unto you. That's a way of saying you better be warned. You better understand that God's wrath is going to be on you, because that's a lie. You are distorting reality, and you are saying the exact opposite of what God has said. Woe unto those who call evil good and good evil. The whole idea of what I just talked about tonight is there is a lie that a lot of people believe that attraction is somehow, that in and of itself is a bad thing, that is, that we shouldn't be doing that, but that lust, that's natural. We can't help it. God made us this way. That's the exact opposite of the way reality actually is. Attraction is not an evil thing. Attraction is natural. That's how God made you. Always having a lustful response, that is what is perverse. That is the truth. It's the exact opposite. So woe unto people who believe the lie and who have it completely backwards. Because listen, you're gonna ruin your life if that's how you think. You're not even gonna have a chance to win against sin if that's how you think. That, in summary, is lie number 3.